Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Off the Crutch. I'm your host, Travis Davis. Today, we're diving into one of my favorite topics, adapted fitness. As someone with a background in adapted physical education and a former wheelchair basketball coach, this space is close to my heart. Physical fitness is crucial for everyone, but especially those with disabilities for a variety of reasons, which we'll be exploring in this episode. While at-home exercises have their place, having access to an inclusive, accessible community space makes a huge difference, and that's exactly what my guest, Jake Weiner, is all about. In 2014, Jake founded ZOOZ Fitness in Los Angeles with a mission to help individuals with disabilities thrive physically, mentally, and socially. With a background in psychology, marketing, judo, and personal training, Jake recognized a need for more inclusive fitness opportunities and set out to fill that gap. What started as personal training sessions in local parks with just the basics quickly grew into something bigger. Today, ZOOZ offers private, semi-private, and group classes in Woodland Hills, California, and throughout the greater LA area, with plans to expand across California and beyond. On April 5th, there will be a Spartan race at Dodger Stadium, so anyone in the LA area, please check it out. Now, let's jump into the interview. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today, Jake. How's it going?
It's going great. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
It's great to talk with somebody who's in the adaptive fitness space and is doing really big things in Los Angeles. And so, how did you get started in the adaptive gym community?
So I got started with zoos really early on as just an exploratory kind of time in my life. I started zoos 10 years ago now, and it really started off with just me exploring what it means to be a professional, what is my career path, what do I want to do, and everything kept going back to informal education and teaching. I love coaching. I grew up playing sports and martial arts, so coaching was always a big part of my life. And I got exposed to different organizations working with folks with developmental and physical disabilities in various capacities, summer camps, for-profit work, nonprofit work, schools. And it started just at a bubbling idea of, I'm in these fields, I have a passion for exercise and movement. Why are the individuals that I'm working with not moving their bodies? Why is no one encouraging them to exercise? A lot of the PE programs in the schools that I was at were not really doing much of anything. So it just started just a passion. I knew I had the excitement and the drive and the experience to do it. And it just, I kind of took a leap of faith and said, hey, I'm gonna try. Let's go for it.
Wow. So 10 years ago, you embarked on, what did that look like?
So when I first started, I started very boots on the ground. I wanted to
Mhm.
get experience doing this thing that I wanted to do. I had trained a couple people in college and growing up, and I taught martial arts a lot
Mhm.
as a teenager and early in my college career. But doing fitness and teaching fitness and exercise to folks with disabilities, I really didn't have a whole lot of experience. So I just started working with a few clients that families that I had met over the years of all these other organizations that I was at. And I said, hey, I'm going to the park. I'm going to start training. Here's my idea. Does your son or daughter want to join me? And thankfully, a lot of the parents said yes. They were open and
Mm.
willing to give me that opportunity. So it started very much boots on the ground. I'm going to train. I did that for 5 years or so, where I just started with one client, worked to two, three, four, had to bring someone on, started group classes. But the idea of a community style space, having a gym space, was always my idea when I started zoos. Even before I had the name zoos, or before I had this idea of what it could become, it was, I need to create a community space that welcomed individuals with disabilities, welcomed their families, welcomed support staff, and we can all share in this dream of creating a healthier future for the people that we're working with.
Hmm. When you were looking at the landscape, did you see that you were filling a void that other gyms in the area weren't doing?
100%. So when I started this, you learn in business a lot. You draw these like Venn diagrams of what I'm good at, where's the
Mm.
need in the community, Is there any money in this? What? And so that was always the first thing that I did. And I came up with this idea because there was really nothing for the individuals that I was working with. There was no outlet in the fitness space. Not only no outlet, but a lot of the gyms were not so accommodating to someone on the spectrum who had various, outbursts or behaviors or, different characteristics that maybe looked different than the individuals that were working at most typical gyms. So it just, the hundreds of clients that I worked with over the years, not doing fitness, but in various capacities, they were just not moving their bodies. And I kept asking myself why. I was going to LA Fitness 24, all the local gyms here, and I just was not, I wasn't seeing folks with disabilities. And I just kept asking myself, why is this not happening? And I think there's several reasons that I'm happy to go into.
Mm-hmm.
But I think all those things led me to wonder, why is no one doing this? Hey, I have this excitement and passion for doing this and expertise. Why don't I start this? So that was just very organic. I kept noticing that there was a massive deficit in the fitness space for folks with disabilities.
What do you think's been the biggest hurdle to incorporate or find those individuals with disabilities to come and work out? Was that hard for you to find those individuals to come to your gym?
So wonderful question. I think the challenges are several fold. Finding the athletes, and we refer to all of our clients as athletes, finding the athletes
Mm.
to actually train with, that I didn't find so difficult initially. And even now, I think there are tons of families and individuals over the age of 18 who are advocates for themselves, who want to move their body and want to find a space that they can exercise and feel confident and lose weight and gain muscle. So that so much wasn't the challenge. But I think once finding those athletes and individuals who were excited about exercise, there's twofold. There's those that are really amped and excited, and then those
Mhm.
that exercise is not a preferred activity. I think disability or not, exercise doesn't always elicit a lot of excitement. Unless
Mhm.
you're crazy like me and love exercise and wake up early to move my body. Unless you're in the fitness space, exercise can sometimes be daunting, can be very intimidating. I don't know what to do. There's a lot of people in the gym who look like they know what they're doing. I don't know. It's very sensory, lights, music. There's a
Mm.
lot going on in a gym that I think is very off-putting for folks with disabilities and without. But when you add a disability, those extra challenges of sensory needs or having a behavior or a space that's accommodating for
Mhm.
various reasons,
Mhm.
I think the challenge of how do I, Jake, as a potential business owner, want to start this? How do I create a space that welcomes everyone? That always is a challenge. So the spaces that I pick, are they accessible? Are they ground floor? Is there a
Mhm.
ramp for folks in wheelchairs? The lighting, the music, the people that I bring in, the capacity, all of those things I try to look at and think ahead. And I ask my athletes, a big thing we do is we work with our athletes, not for our athletes, or we don't train them, we train with them. So I think what me as a business owner, I try to get input from a lot of our families and athletes. Hey, does this make sense? Excuse me, color choices, is this accessible? What kind of equipment do you want to see? So there was a lot of input early on and still is from a lot of our athletes, but that buy-in is always a challenge. So how do I create a space that's accessible? Once we create the space, how do I keep the movements and exercise routines exciting enough for
Mhm.
someone to want to come back? I think longevity of a habit of exercising can be hard if it's not something you enjoy. So that's also something that we constantly think about. We change our classes, our structure. We try to make sure that it's fun and engaging. And then the financial piece obviously is a
Mhm.
major hurdle for a lot of families who have kids with disabilities. A gym in general, a typical gym might run you 20, $30 for a month and you can access it whenever you want. We are a space that's appointment only. So there's a slightly higher cost to that. But when I first started ZOOZ, in addition to creating all the things that I wanted to create, I never wanted someone to not do our programs because they couldn't afford it.
Mhm.
Exercise, listen, is a right. You don't need a gym for that. You don't need equipment for that. I'm a big proponent of foundational body weight training. I love going to the park, using benches, trees, whatever it might be. So you don't need a gym. However, if you don't know what you're doing, you're not comfortable in a space, you don't
Mhm.
want to get injured, you have certain challenges physically, developmentally, behaviorally, whatever it might be, you need someone to guide you and to help you through that. If not for extended period of time, for a short period of time, so you can learn what to do. Every trainer, our goal is not to work with you forever. We want to give you the tools to be able to do it on your own. Or if you come to me once a week, I want you to do it 3 other times, do it at home. Here's what I
Sure.
want you to do. So the financial piece was really important for us. Initially, we were only private pay. It was an out-of-pocket expense. I
Hmm.
tried to price it super fair and affordable for all of our families. I know there's many other expenses that a lot of families who have kids with disabilities have to pay into. So there's always hesitation with that. About 2 years ago, we got vendored through something called the regional centers, which are a program that helps folks with developmental disabilities access programs in their community, and it's 100% paid for. So that was something that was really important to us to be able to give our families not another reason why not to join a gym. The
Mm.
money issue, the money obstacle is no longer a concern. And that just means we're able to help so many more people. If you don't have to pay for something out of pocket. And we have other resources that we use to help our families pay for services if the regional center is not accessible.
Mhm.
So we always find a way. There's always a way.
I think regardless of where individual with disabilities are living in, you're always going to find areas in which like those communities may not have the disposable income to go to the gym.
For sure.
And, unfortunately that there's many factors of why that is, but that's another conversation. It's really good that you go out of your way to make sure that not only the gym is accessible, but the financial piece is accessible for your athletes.
Yeah, we always joke, any obstacle that's in your way, I will find a way around it.
Mhm.
I'm very much a solutions driven owner, and just me as a person, I see an obstacle and I want to find a way around it. So if you want to move your body and you want to exercise, and this is the place that you feel like it's the right fit,
Mhm.
we will always find a way.
Mhm. Speaking of accessibility, in your experience of other gyms, what do you think those gyms get wrong about accessibility?
I think a few things. We primarily work with folks with developmental disabilities.
Mhm.
We have a range of folks with physical disabilities, behavioral challenges, sensory needs, and a lot of individuals who don't have a diagnosis, who just want to come and support what we do. But I think a big thing is just listening to the population that you serve. What are their needs? And I think a big thing that why we're so successful and why our families and athletes appreciate coming. I think that it's a very welcoming space, and I think that can be a very cliche and broad term, but a space that families can come and they don't feel like they're being judged. They
Mm.
don't feel like there are extra eyes looking at them. Oh my God, there's someone in a wheelchair. What is it? What's wrong with them? There's someone
Mm.
who has a behavior, an outburst, a verbal outburst. What's going on with them? Are they gonna come towards me? There's a lot of fear and anxiety around disability, and I think a lot of gyms just don't have the resources and the knowledge to be able to accept
Mm.
anyone. I think we're not seeing a lot of these folks because it's not such a welcoming space. For those reasons, parents don't feel, not necessarily safe, but comfortable to come.
Mhm.
I think as far as equipment, I think in most typical gyms, there is a lot going on. There are often hundreds of pieces of equipment that often have a description of what to do or a picture of what to do, but exercise is not always so inherent for most people. How do I move my body in a functional way that makes sense? So I think having a space, our gym in particular, is very much based in foundational training. So we don't have large pieces of equipment that have only one use. A lot of
Mm.
what we do is we try to teach the foundational movements that will help an athlete achieve success with activities of daily living. And I think a lot of gyms have functional training spaces, but the trainers and coaches, I think, are not always willing or have the knowledge base or
Mm.
expertise to take on someone on the spectrum, to take on someone with a wheelchair, with a physical disability, whatever it might be. There are a lot of nuances to training, right? Training can be regressed and progressed to whatever degree an individual needs. And I think coaches don't always go coaches at typical gyms don't always have that broad knowledge base. I have someone in a wheelchair. How do I get them to perform X, Y, or Z exercise? You have to be very creative. You have to be willing to hey, I'm not sure how to best help you. How do you want to be supported in this? Here's
Hmm.
what I'm trying to accomplish. Can you help me with that? I want to help you. So there's a lot of that communication. I think that's not often done. And then, a physical space, I think a lot of gyms are more so coming around to being more physically accessible. So I think a lot of locations, I think it depends on where you go. But I think that really what it comes down to is a welcoming environment that really advertises, hey, we take everyone. That's not often true. A lot of our families come in and they go, from the moment they come in, without me introducing myself, explaining what we do, giving the whole spiel of here's Zoos, they come in and say, wow, this feels very welcome. Like nobody looked at me, nobody looked at my son. I felt really welcome and safe and comfortable when I came in here. And that's what I want. That's what I want from the moment you walk in here. So it's the colors, it's the layout, it's how the gym is spaced out. Is it a place that that I feel comfortable bringing my son or daughter? Is it a place that I feel comfortable as someone with a disability coming into? That I think is always the question that we like to ask and get an input from. Hey, are we hitting those markers? Is this a place that you really want to come to? And I think for here, thankfully, our community, we keep our athletes keep coming back because it is a space that really feels welcoming and comfortable.
I'm glad that you brought up hitting the markers because I'm wondering when I used to coach wheelchair basketball, a lot of what my players took away from it was outside of the basketball court. They were able to develop friends and teamwork, but how do you measure success or like impact in your athlete's progress beyond like the physical gains?
Yeah, that's an incredibly important thing that we talk about almost daily here at Zeus.
Mhm.
I think a lot of your physical markers, obviously, we try to track and are they putting on muscle? Are we progressively overloading the weight? All those things. But I think for us, a big marker is the athlete coming back week after week.
Mhm.
That's a huge win. Is the athlete wearing their ZOOZ Fitness gear, their T-shirt? Are they coming in excited to train? That's a huge win for us. I think the social component. We are constantly talking about, are we doing the best in our ability here at Zoos? Yes, we're a gym, but we also are a space that we have a captive audience that we can incorporate social skills, communication skills, conflict resolution. You can build a lot of those other organic skills within a gym setting. So we have many athletes who hang out outside the gym. They make plans to go have lunch after their session, after a group class on a Sunday. They all four or five of them go out to a meal after.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of things like that anecdotally that we hear from parents that I met. My daughter met her best friend that they hang out on the weekend. They do sleepovers. They met at ZOOZ Fitness.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of those markers socially. And then I just think, from a lot of our athletes, like I mentioned before, a lot of parents come in and say, my son or daughter hates exercise. You won't get them to do anything. So I say, watch, give me one session and we'll see what we can do. So I think that, those families will come back and say, the night before they put out their ZOOZ Fitness shirt as like
Mhm.
a proud uniform and
Yeah.
they're excited to come to ZOOZ. That's a huge win for a lot of our athletes and our families. They don't get excited about anything else other than coming to ZOOZ sometimes. Also, just a quick story that I love to share that like really rings home to, are we hitting the markers? We had an athlete, this is years ago. I used to train, he used to come to some of our group classes, and his mom had shared that he's turning, I don't remember what age, call it 20. And mom wanted to take him to Disneyland. And the day that they selected happened to fall on a day that he was coming to ZOOZ Fitness for a class. Mom asked him, son got really upset. He goes, no, I'm going to ZOOZ. So we beat out a Disneyland trip because he
Mhm.
felt so like he was so hooked on coming to class. Routine is everything for a lot of our athletes and structure, that over Disneyland, he wanted to come to Zeus. They ended up going to Disneyland on another day, so it worked out. But that for me is just telling how important of an activity this is. Not
Mhm.
only is it the social piece, not only is it the physical piece, but they feel good about coming. This is something that I need to do. No matter what else is going on, I know I have ZOOZ Fitness, and that's why we hardly ever close. We find replacements. We, as much as our athletes need the routine, we try to keep that routine and structure.
Wow. Are you looking to expand anytime soon?
Absolutely. As we're speaking now, we are looking for our second location, um, hopefully in the greater Los Angeles area. and future hopes of franchising. I have big dreams, and our team have big dreams of what we can create. And we can only do that with the support of our community. And our community have asked for more locations and want more facilities like zoos. So yeah, we are definitely in the expansion mode for sure.
When you think about expanding, what are some potential roadblocks do you see?
So the financial piece obviously is something that we
Sure.
we
Yeah.
always consider.
Yeah.
But there are ways around that. Like I mentioned, obstacles I get around. But I think obviously finding the right location that's convenient and accessible. So even from that perspective, is it accessible from a freeway? Are there multiple freeways that someone can access? LA is massive. LA has insane traffic. So that's stuff like that from an accessibility standpoint. Just physically getting to the gym, is it something that a lot of families can access? So that's something I look at as an obstacle, and we try to work around that. The financial piece, coming up with the capital and what kind of equipment do we need? What's that going to cost? And then I think overall looking at the space and you know how it can be laid out. What's the current structure of the gym? What does it look like? All of those things I try to take into consideration, but none of those obstacles I think are something that are ever going to stop me from opening second, third location. I mean, we had those similar obstacles here. We were able
Hmm.
to work around it. We just want to make sure that as we expand, we maintain the same quality. That
Mm.
I think is the number one thing that I constantly think about. Quality of our training sessions is something that's incredibly important to me as the owner and
Mm.
our entire team. So we have and are still creating all of those curriculum and procedures and protocols that work so well for us. When we open second, third, fourth gym, we have a tried and true method. You just have to implement it and get the right people. What we're all about. Our business is about people
Hmm.
and coaches. I'm very rigorous with my hiring. And the interview process is pretty intensive because I need someone who checks all of our boxes.
Yeah. Checking all of the boxes is important, especially when you're working with individuals with disabilities. A lot of times I assume when I talk with people that they know the same amount about disability that I do, and then I forget I'm part of the largest minority group. And because I live it every day, and then you go into places that are not accessible, and then it's like, oh yeah, there are places out there, or there are groups of people that may not know or how to interact with somebody with a disability. So that's really good that you are intentional about who you're bringing into your facility.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's where I think a lot of people miss the mark. You were saying what are some of those obstacles? I think anytime you join a new community, like if we open in a different location in Los Angeles, that surrounding community hopefully now has access to what we do and understands what we do. I mean, what we're trying to also do is change this paradigm you're talking about. Maybe we don't have as much knowledge as yourself or someone with a disability, but you got to be
Hmm.
open to asking questions.
Yep.
I don't claim to know everything. I am constantly, there are athletes who come in who have disabilities that I haven't heard of or I don't know the nuances of it. Hey, let's have a conversation. How can we best help you? Is this the best place for you? And I think that's something really important to me as we continue to expand is not only our team at zoos, but the greater community around. I mean, we're here in Woodland Hills and we're the first gym, obviously in Woodland Hills, that focuses our efforts on folks with disabilities. And
Hmm.
all of our neighbors we've had conversations with and they all see our athletes come in and out and see the nuances. So I think the more we can expose everybody to disability and what that means and what it doesn't mean. I think also there's a lot of misinformation out there. So the more that we can expose everybody that people with disabilities want to do everything that you want to do,
Yeah.
and sometimes even more so, let's give them an opportunity. There should be no reason. It's a no-brainer for me, and that's what we're trying to preach to everybody.
I'll end it with this because I think it's important that other people follow your lead. And if there are individuals out there like gym owners or just somebody that wants to start a gym like you 10 years ago, what advice would you give someone looking to break into the adaptive fitness space?
Yeah, it's actually so funny. I just had a conversation about an hour ago with a young woman who wants to start a gym in another city. And she came in, and here's the advice: start working with folks with disabilities, start training them, start encouraging and including them in programming. I think for anyone, the best advice that I was ever given, that I did myself, was just experiential learning. I had a bunch of athletes that I worked with initially, started with one, two, three, and that's how I learned my training style. How do I train? What does an individual need who's on the spectrum? What are the nuances of that? How do I regress an exercise? So I think that is a huge component, is just whatever fear, anxiety, stress that might be out there. How do I start with someone with disability?
Mhm.
Just to start.
Sure.
If you have a friend, reach out in the community, find someone with a disability. If this is something you want to get into, and start training them, and you learn on the job. But I think also an important thing is keeping an open mind, and not having an ego, not being afraid to ask questions, not being afraid to make mistakes
Mm.
early on. And even now, there are many exercises that I would give an athlete, and they would have a huge behavior, and I would regret it after, but then I learned.
Mm.
I think with any kind of mistakes or challenges, there's always something to learn from that. So yeah, those are the tips. I mean, just try, experience, learn, ask questions.
I think that's great. For my listeners who are in your neck of the woods, where is ZOOZ Fitness located?
So we are located in Woodland Hills. Cross streets are DeSoto and Burbank if you're in the area. But
Mhm.
you can look us up on Instagram, any other social media platform, our website. You can find our address.
Perfect.
Yeah, we're pretty easily accessible to the freeway, which is nice.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jake. It was really refreshing because I don't get to do many of these interviews often. And it's nice to talk to somebody who shares the same passion that I do about fitness and working with individuals with disabilities. So I really appreciate you sharing your knowledge about what's going on in Southern California and how you're just trying to grow this to impact more lives of people with disabilities.
Thank you so much. It's always an honor to get to share our story and to reach a community of people that haven't maybe heard about what we're doing. So thank you for having me.